So growing potatoes in Louisiana is pretty easy, okay? For the most part, you can plant them pretty close to year round because our weather is fairly warm. Now, obviously your crop will not yield as much, obviously during the winter time, because it's not technically a winter crop, but because our climate is fairly warm most of the time, you can get away with growing potatoes a lot longer than most people. Now you can see some of these flowers coming up, and this is normally when they say this is the best time to pick your potatoes once the plant flowers. Now I prefer to let my plant keep going, so right here this had already flowered and died, and you can see that it's not necessarily from the heat itself, but more or less just because the plant has kind of grown its course. Now I like that because I get a little bit bigger potatoes, because I noticed that regardless of what type of potato I plant, I tend to not usually get very giant potatoes, which is not a big deal because small potatoes are very good. So how do you know when they're ready? So one is the flower issue. The other one is once I move this dirt, once I move this branch, you can see like right here, see how it's coming up? They'll start to push themselves out of the dirt, okay? Now, that's usually a pretty good telltale sign. It doesn't always happen depending on how you plant your potatoes, so it's not something to bank on, but that's a good idea. Now, I will grab that main plant, trace that vine back to when that flowered. This is it. And I'll just simply, slowly kind of tug and pull up on it, all right? And as I pull out, you'll see a gap that came out. Underneath, you'll see a whole bunch of little baby potatoes, all right? Those I'll actually peel off and just simply replant right back into the ground. Here, all you're gonna have to do is just start to pick it up, and you'll slowly start finding more and more potatoes. Now, it's called an eye potato. So look, here's a good sized potato. You know the kind when you get that little growth coming out on the edge of the potato when they've been sitting in the pantry? That's an eye. So if you cut that eye out and plant it, simply just throw it in the dirt a couple of inches down and cover it. That'll actually yield you close to sometimes up to 7 potatoes. So what you can do now is just start grabbing. You can use a little tool, whatever you want, and they'll just start popping up more and more potatoes. All right, so these are the Yukon Gold yellow potatoes that I planted, and all you have to do is simply this one I'll probably just replant. And what you're gonna do is you just put them in a cardboard box so that this will keep the moisture from rotting them out. And what you want to do is you want to not wash the potatoes. Now obviously you're gonna wash the potatoes when you eat them, but as you store them, you don't ever wash them, because the longer the dirt's on them, the longer they'll keep. And when I mean longer, I mean they'll keep a long, long time, all right? So you can store them in a cool, dry place, out of the sunlight, like in your garage, and you will have potatoes for quite some time, okay? I hope that helps out. You can do this for any variety.